Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Industry in Transition Zoom call. I am thrilled to have our friend Alex David, who is the CEO of Stifel Independent Advisors, with us today. And Alex, you look great. It's sort of a breath of fresh air for everybody, running around in sweatpants for COVID. It's good to see you looking good.
Thank you, man. Good to see you here. Good to see you, Tony.
Good to see you. So we have a lot to talk about. We haven't chatted in a little bit, at least, online here. Boy, you've grown this thing amazingly well. You got a whole bunch of very large teams coming in. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that and kind of a little bit about where, you see the trends, kind of going forward in the independent space. I think it's a real interesting turn of events for people to take a look at, where a firm like Stifel, with a great, regional culture and a national sort of footprint, at the same time, now growing out the independent space, with you, and you've been in the business for a long time. So you have a lot. But just to first start, post-COVID, we've got inflation, we've got looming taxes, we've got war in Europe, there's a lot going on. How are you guys holding up, and how are your advisors holding up?
Guys are holding up well. Kind of the traditional, make sure you're well allocated, make sure your clients have a good sense of how the markets work, so that you've trained them so they're not panicking, they're not emotional. And so, yes, we do have these hiccups. It's more volatile than ever before. But honestly, we're not getting, and I see the numbers, honestly, Tony, we're not getting panic calls from clients, and we're not getting panic calls from advisors saying, I'm receiving a panic call from a client. So although the marketplace seems like it's all over the place, and markets are down and we got a 10% correction, when I come in the office every day and I leave, it seems to be a little bit more than usual, but nothing crazy.
And to be clear, all of your, I'd love to talk a little bit about this too. So the folks who join Stifel Independent Advisors, they have access to all the bells and whistles and tools that the Stifel advisors have.
They do. I mean, that's honestly, Tony, that's one of our hallmarks. That's one of our value propositions that we offer in the marketplace. You've got access to an investment banking firm, a wealth management firm that's been around for 130 years. And so the bells, the whistles, the tools, the investment prowess, when we sell our research to other firms, and they have access to it for free. So
interesting thing, something you just mentioned. So 130 years, right? One of the things, missing sometimes in the independent space is stability, right? and longevity. So, I mean, that's got to be a real help to you when you're out in the field, sort of pushing, because not only is it around 130 years, our friend over there has been increasing every quarter. There's a dividend. I mean, it's pretty good. It's performed pretty well.
Yeah, I honestly, listen, Ron is the biggest cheerleader of our division. And he's probably my biggest cheerleader. And the fact that, you get some grooming to be a CEO from a very, very successful CEO who, since he's been here, the stock price has risen 4,000%. Like he's a good boss and a good person to learn from.
Yeah, no question about that. And of course, that we talked about that. That's something you can offer, out to the field. And I think that idea of stability, because there's a lot of nascent, independent firms coming up, and certainly it'd be very hard for one of them to put together a track record like that, Yeah.
And honestly, there's some good, listen, at the end of the day, we have some very, very good competitors. Some are super innovative, but there is this one thing called stability that not just the advisor, Tony, but when you say to your client, hey, I've decided to hire Stifel or another firm, sometimes the answer back is, hey, I trust you, Tony, but tell me a little bit more about this company. And so the ability to say, no, this company's been around for 130 years, it can be a big deal with the client. So we appreciate that and we enjoy it.
I know one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot, what sort of separates, Stifel independent from maybe some other folks. The good competition out there is access.
Yeah.
In access, there's a lot of different, pieces of access, right? One is access to capital, right? You got a firm that's been making money. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of these things that I think we sometimes take for granted. When you have big deals flowing, you're like, everyone has access to capital. It's like, yeah, everyone has deals and relatively, decent sized deals. So do we. But it's not just the access to like deal money, if you will, to, help you transition over, but it's also access to capital when you want to be opportunistic. You see someone, you'd like to buy a book of business. Hey, can I tap into, a working capital, a line of credit? Can I tap into some capital to help me build my business, to recruit an advisor in my practice? That's when it starts to get a little interesting, because often firms are like, well, I had the capital initially. I don't really have any more for you. And so I think that piece of it is important.
I think you're hitting on something there, because, a lot of times, first of all, and this is not a knock on a custodians or whatever, but they're not built for that. So
Yeah.
My experience, having built a couple of these, firms, to be able to talk to somebody like you, who comes from that back, who understands what a deal is and understands why you need to do it, understands the economics of it, understands how to price these things, and that's a huge advantage, because you're really kind of going upstream when you're talking to a custodian. They don't want to be involved in that type.
Yeah.
They're happy to bring you over, but that's not what they do. It's like, go ahead, do it. Go to this bank or find a financing there. But that sounds to me like a real partnership when you could do it that way.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's, all the advisors, they want the platform, the resources, those are table stakes. But when you start saying, okay, we have access to help you get started, we have access to help you grow, we have access to help you buy, access to capital, from those perspective, you really begin to separate yourselves from the custodians, and even some of our competitors that really don't have a robust, well-capitalized firm that's backing them. And so that's why I think we're beginning to see these like different iterations of like equity plays. Nothing wrong with that, but if you don't have it here, you got to get it somewhere if you're trying to grow. And that's, I think, why we're seeing some of that stuff burgeon.
I think you also see, firms like, Raymond James was sort of a leader in, sort of going out in the independent space, Wells Fargo, stuff like that. But, and they have, access to a lot of big things like banking, and, you have, what do you guys have versus that slice of your competition?
Yeah. I think what I have found is, as our client, meaning the advisor, their clients become more sophisticated in their needs, their desires, and their portfolios become more complex, if you will. The ability to bring those products and services to bear internally, in-house, is a big deal. So access to, a bank, to do securities-backed lending. Well, we have that in-house. And access to investment banking. Yeah, we have that in-house. And access to venture capital deals with minimum entry points. Well, we have that in-house. And so you start thinking about, that client, that $10 million client, $5 million client, $100 million client, what is it they need? And you start rounding out all the things, the products and services they need. That's what we've built out within Stifel, and our Stifel independent advisors have access to those things. And that's a big deal. And to your point, we then begin to separate ourselves even more from, I would say, the competition. Now, the firms that you've mentioned, Wells and Ray and so on and so forth, I think they have many of those things. I think we have them better, quite frankly. But more importantly, when I combine that now with the control and the way our culture has been designed, which is, Ron says we have, and I love this, it's the ability to truly say, yes, we can do that, because Reg BI has changed the way firms are viewing their culture. So access to those things and access to a culture which is still leaning in to say, yes, we can, I think now separates us completely from others.
You know, you've had a lot of success in the last year, you know, and we should be letting people know about it, right? But they've been really big teams. So
Yeah.
what do you attribute that to? Is it some of the things we just said, like the products and services, or I mean, we're talking about, you know, $1 billion, you know, teams that come over, you know, and move. So what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, well, we are proud of the team that I have surrounded myself with, and also proud of the team that has been here, you know, because, you know, we've had an independent for 30 years. Juan always says we just really didn't do anything with it. Now we're doing something with it. So the team does a really good job of that. So I'll state that up front. That's important. But I attribute to these very, very large $1 billion, you know, teams coming on board with kind of exactly what I've just said. They've knocked on the door and said, we're looking at this firm over here, and it's a good independent platform. And we're looking at you all, Alex. Not only are you a good independent platform, but all these things that you've just mentioned and you've iterated, they simply don't have, or they need to partner to get. So they don't have a bank that they own. They've got a partner to get that. They don't have access to venture. They've got a partner to get that. They don't issue, you know, they're not an underwriter of municipal bonds. And you guys are the largest municipal bond underwriter in the country. So they've said the table stakes is having a good independent platform, but these folks have had to partner to get the other stuff where we have it in-house. And I think that's the number one reason why these $1 billion firms have decided to join us.
And these guys everybody gets to own their book, right? I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, that's typical of Stifel. Stifel doesn't chase guys, you know, either. If you know, not a lot of guys leave, but if you're going to leave, you know, we'll help you pack kind of thing. And is it same on the indie side?
It is. It's, and again, I know that there are, you know, different permutations, different iterations of what independence is. We still are of the mindset that once you go independent, we contractually say you own 100% of your book of business. Right. We've always felt that way. We think it puts us and you on the same side to service your client. And honestly, I mean, it's resonating. I mean, Tony, I you know, knock on wood, you know, it really has the attention of many advisors. And I was telling you earlier, I'm trying to keep up with, and I'm not, I want to make sure that this doesn't come off as if we're bragging too much, but I really am trying to keep up with the volume of the home office visits that we have. We literally have 3 this week. And so it clearly is resonating with the type of advisors that we want to attract. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's, you know, a big part of recruiting is not only saying yes, but saying no to the wrong type of person. So you still, I mean, because you have an independent firm, right? So having done this too, an independent firm is not quite a platform, right? You're sort of in the middle there. You still want to get the right type of person. You want to find somebody who fits culturally, is going to be happy there, you know, that has a good, clean record, I'm sure, not looking for a check, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I was reading this one book and it said I'm sure I'm going to get it wrong, but it basically said the most successful leaders, when it's easy to say yes, focus forces you to say no, even to good ideas. And so sometimes there could be a pretty decent advisor on paper and we'll still say no, not because they're not a good person. They just don't fit to what we're trying to create here. We really are looking for, you know, $1 million practices above that have this penchant for growth. And if they're not quite there, that's totally fine. We literally,
you're not doing them a favor. You're not doing anybody a favor by bringing somebody on who's not going to be happy in your system.
Yeah, we can't force it. We can't force it. No.
Yeah, it's just going to make everybody miserable in the long term. And as I always say, you know, if an advisor's a jerk, his clients are going to be jerks. That's part 2. So you want to hire nice people.
Correct.
Jim Brinkley at Legg Mason, you say, find nice, rich people. It's leave the obnoxious ones alone. You don't have to talk to them.
And without, you know, sounding like I'm just quoting mine all the time, but this is another thing of just don't take yourself too seriously. You know, it's have some fun. This business is too hard. Like, we want to attract people who want to work hard, have some fun, help their clients.
Yeah, it should be fun because and especially now that we're coming, we all need a little fun, at this point.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So when you look at, trends, right? There's obviously a lot of stuff, in the pandemic that we want to leave behind, but there's some stuff that worked pretty well, like this, like Zooms and stuff like that. From your point of view, I know I've talked to Ron about this from his point of view. What do you see are the big things we're going to keep, or maybe that are accelerated through the pandemic that are real positives in your mind, and maybe a couple of things you want to leave behind?
Yeah, so let's take this, the Zoom meetings. I think,
because, by the way, a lot of your big recruiting, which is amazing to me, probably happened on Zoom, right? A lot of these billion-dollar teams on Zoom, which I never would have thought 10 years ago that would be the case.
I mean, at least initially, a lot of these calls and a lot of the legwork, the due diligence legwork, happened on Zoom. And frankly, because now it's a technology that everyone knows how to use. In fact, I'm probably zoomed out on too many Zoom calls.
Yeah.
But the fact that you have your clients, older clients, know how to use Zoom. Yeah. I literally think that was a game changer in terms of the reach that advisors have with their clients and the reach that we have with advisors. I do not think that is changing whatsoever. Now, with that said, I am a huge fan of being in the office, sharing, collaborating, strategizing, whiteboarding. I like to dress up. That's me. And so I do think that there's a bit of that, and that hybrid model, I think, is where we'll land.
Yeah, look, we're an apprenticeship culture. You learn. You learn a lot by the guy down the hall, because like, what is it? How do you sell a 401k? I can't do this. This is a pain in the ass having somebody who knows how to do it.
I mean, how many times have you walked into? I mean, I always say, so you have the meeting, but how many times has the real meeting taken place before the meeting or after the meeting? I mean, that's stuff you don't get over Zoom.
And you and I have been to those meetings, so we know. Now, so that brings up something. There is this great resignation kind of thing going on. There's if I'm in, it's a different thing than what Ron has to deal with over on his end of stuff, right? There's this idea of independent firms. They have to staff. They have to go out there and get people, get help. How do you guys, how involved are you with the folks that come over in terms of helping them even, staff up or find the right locations and, all that kind of stuff?
We are very, very helpful as we help them, stand up their firms, because, if you are already independent, it's relatively easy. We may need you to tweak your technology, maybe enhance your technology, get new machines here and there. But for the most part, you're just taking down your sign, putting up our sign, making sure everything matches over, and we're off to the races. If you are on the W-2 model and you're standing up your business for the very first time, there are a number of considerations to take down. And most of the time, you've never entered a negotiation for a corporate lease. You're like, I don't know where to start. This thing's 100 pages, or hiring folks. Should I have an HR manual? And so there are a number of things where we actually have an internal partner and an external partner that literally does all of that stuff. They have this tagline of paper clips to leases. Like, they do all that stuff, whether it's finding pictures or a carpet or furniture or technology or phone systems, or even staff if necessary. So we have that available to them. In addition, we also have built out a virtual assistant, CAs, if you will, that assists with the one man or one woman shops. And so we think we've thought about it in the right way after maybe 15 years experience in the business. There are some advisors that are like, no, the coolest thing about doing this, Alex, is I want to build this myself. This is really exciting to me and my husband, or me and my wife, and we go out and we start looking for space. Others are frightened by it, and we try to help them through it.
Right. Well, that's great that there's sort of that, that mix there. By the way, if you hear a dog barking in the background, that's my dog. It's all part of this new Zoom environment that we're dealing
Don't worry
with.
about it.
We've all become a little more casual with stuff,
Yeah.
just the way it is. All right. So look, believe it or not, so we're at like 20 or so minutes here.
We're out of time already?
Oh, we don't have to be totally out of time. If there's anything that I didn't ask you or that you wanted to talk about, we can do that now. I know, people have an unending interest in what firms are up to.
Yeah, I would say we're having a ton of fun over here. I love the fact that I use this term quite often, and if you watch me on LinkedIn, I use it. We're getting the band back together, and so it's so cool to be able to reunite with folks that I worked for before, and they're coming on board, and also have the greatest vote of confidence is when we have practices that used to be my client at other firms are knocking at the door and saying, hey, we're coming over. And so we've had a number of those. So it feels good to be getting the band back together, and we're at it. We're having,
it's our world's a small world, right? I mean, it just is. You tend to see people the same things, and I think that's one thing that senior leaders need to do too, is collaborate, listen, talk to other people, who are friends and been friends for a long time, and everyone has different, paths to go. There's nothing right or wrong, right? We're just trying to do the best we can with what we have. So it sounds like you guys are doing great over there. It's good to catch up, and we'll do it again.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Tony.